Hey there, welcome back to SureFire Live. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope everybody's having a good week. This past week was the National Chimney Sweep Guild Convention in Las Vegas, and a lot of chimney people were there, and it was a great event. Want to welcome Marty Frazier to the show. He says, good evening, everyone. Hello, Marty. Corey gives us a wave. And then somebody else says something, and I don't know what that is. Seems like maybe some spammers got in here. But we were at the event, great event, really great event. Chad Murray says hello. And then Cody Whitwood says, chimney time, baby, let's hit this. Cody is such a joy to be with. And it looks like Chad Murray's team is representing well here. But yeah, Cody had a great time at the Vegas show. He was whenever I'd see him, he'd be happy and recording, and then he was doing a lot of social posts. So he was absolutely great. Ryan John says, "Hey fellas, thank you, Ryan, for being part of this." So tonight I have a special guest on. I have two guests. I have Alan Rush and Ryan Hall. Now I've known Ryan for years. I've heard he was the unicorn with Chuck Hall's company, Winston Services. And but I'll tell you, I went to his class and talked to him a little bit beforehand because he hadn't really spoken, to the public about what he knows and what he does every day. And I'll tell you, thoroughly enjoyed his class. I've listened to hundreds of speakers, and Ryan came across very authentic. Brendan Harris says, "Let's go." And and a lot of people in the audience said, man, this is maybe one of the best, talks I've heard, and he just connected really well. So I invited him to come on tonight, and he said yes. And then I called my man, Alan, and we've all worked together in different ways. And so I'm happy to have him also from a different angle. A lot of times we have owners on the show, and tonight, we have Ryan, who works for another well-known company and well-known gentleman. But it was really interesting his take on it. So with that, I'm going to bring these guys on. Hey, Ryan. Hey, Alan.
What's going on?
What's up, buddy?
How are you guys tonight?
Doing good.
So unfortunately, Ryan has this Redskin stuff in the back. So please, I know it's distracting. Please put that out of your mind.
Sorry.
I went and looked for my Titans flag, and I couldn't find it in time. So
hey, Ryan, thank you for joining us. Alan, you too. Ryan, you spoke at the national event. What did people say after you were done talking?
Man, I was surprised. Immediately when the session ended, like there was a line of people at the stage just going, hey, that was awesome, asking me questions. Like I didn't expect that type of response. It was pretty overwhelming, and my dad was there, my dad's crying and all types of stuff. It was a mess, man. It was so much bigger a deal than it should have been, you know what I mean? But honestly, it was a good time. I enjoyed it. I got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of information out there. I thought 90 minutes was gonna be hard to fill. Ended up not even being close to enough time. Like I was like squeezing stuff together at the end. So it ended up working out good. It was a good experience for me. It was one of my goals that I set for myself 3-4 years ago when I sat down and made my list of master goals, and was to speak at the national convention. So I'm a box checker, man. That's the way I've always been. I got lists of goals everywhere, all in my office, at my house. So it was a big deal to get that done, man. I enjoyed it. It was awesome.
You did fantastic. And Alan, I know you're a sales guy and you heard great stuff about it as well, didn't you?
Oh, it was unbelievable. Yeah, everybody kept talking about how great it was. So yeah, I mean, killing it.
So not that we're going to necessarily replicate that, Ryan, but I do want you to kind of recap mostly kind of where you come from, what you do, but also how successful you are. Now, again, a lot of people say sales is a dirty word, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how you connect with people. So if you don't mind, let's tell the Ryan Hall story. Let's tell you had the good, the bad, and the ugly in there. So if you don't mind, just tell people kind of where you come from and kind of what's going on with you.
Yeah, I'm from Northern Virginia, DC area, 41 years old. And my thing for the sales, the name of it was selling yourself to your clients. It's not being a salesman. It's just kind of putting yourself in a position to where they trust you. You know what I mean? Because once you get them to trust, once you get them to that relief moment where they're happy you're there because you're helping them, then that's you can basically I don't want to say you can write your own ticket, but at that point they trust you like your family. Like you come fix my chimney, come fix my foundation, whatever it is. They don't care what it is at that point because they trust you. And so what you tell them is real to them. You know what I mean? And that's important. And just being honest with them. That's where I come from. But man, my story. So, I unfortunately got in this industry and I went to play football in school and I shattered my foot. I came home from school and I got kind of had a bunch of surgeries on my right foot and got hooked on some painkillers and was taking a lot of pills and just kind of got in a bad way. I was working for Chuck at Winston's. I got hooked up. The way I got into chimneys was my mom was selling her house. I had just come home from college. I just had all these surgeries and my mom was selling her house. And part of the home inspection was get your chimney fixed. And this raggedy tag group in a little Astro minivan that had a padlock holding the door shut pulled up at my yeah, that was Chuck's truck back in the day. But they pulled up at the house and this guy I knew from high school got out, Marty Potomajerski, and he got out and they jumped on the chimney and they wrote my mom like a $9,000 estimate. And so after it was all done, we ended up having to do the work. And after it was done, I told Marty, I'm like, man, you guys are writing $9,000 estimates. Like, you must be making pretty good money doing this. And he was like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty, pretty relaxing. I got a good boss, Chuck. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to call you tomorrow. So like 3 weeks later, I'm working on as a helper, for Chuck. But I was already kind of going down a bad path with some drugs and stuff. And it was a struggle to begin with. I struggled with it for 7-8 years. Long story short, I worked for Chuck for like 4.5 years before it kind of got out of control. I got arrested on Pentagon property in the work truck with like 30 bags of heroin in the Winston's truck. Yeah, it was bad. Chuck had to come down to Pentagon and prevent the other helper that was with me from going to jail and stop them from impounding the truck. And so that was my end of my first run with Chuck. So, it kind of spiraled. I worked for a couple of different companies until I ruined it with them and burnt every bridge I ever had. And finally in 2008, I got sick. I got what's called endocarditis, and I got a blood infection where it built the vegetation on my heart valve. I ended up going into like a coma for 3 weeks, and I was in the ICU, and they wouldn't let me leave the hospital with my PICC line because I was an addict. So they kept me in there for basically, almost 90 days. And in that 90 days, 0 people came to visit me. So it was a long 90 days. Now, granted, 3 of those weeks I was asleep, but the other time I was awake, no one came, and something just clicked in me, like I got to get this back. So
when you say that nobody came and you say you got to get it back, what did that say to you? When you say you got to get it back, what does that mean?
Yeah, it just meant that I was pretty popular in high school. I had a lot of family. I was close to my family. I had a really tight family growing up. So we were all close, and it was a big extended family. And I had just burnt every bridge I'd ever walked on. Just lit it on fire. Like I stole from my parents, I stole from my grandparents. It's just that whole drug addict behavior, just where you just light everything on fire. And I was there, and I had ruined every bit of trust anybody in my family or anybody around me, friends, had for me. It was 0. Like I walked in the room and said something, it was mud. Really? So that really set me on a path of like just brutal honesty from there on, because to overcome that and build those bridges back and to really kind of get people to trust me again, I just had to be wide open, completely blunt, honest, and just had to put it all out there, whether it was good or bad. And it took a while, but I was able to build back all my relationships. I built it back with my wife. We're doing good now. We've been together 20 years. And we got kids. My kid just got his driver's license today. So, he's going to college next year to Russell in Louisville. I mean, we got that back. I worked on my family first, and then I went into then got back to work and started with some smaller companies and basically just worked hard and was like brutally honest. And that translated into sales for me for some reason. Just walking into customers' houses and just being like, hey, you need a rebuild, but the bricks aren't going to match perfect. You know what I mean? Like just everything I would tell them, like say, hey, I know you got a water leak. I'm going to fix your chimney, but I can't promise I'm going to stop your leak. Like it's a water leak. How can I promise I'm going to stop it? I can promise to eliminate this, but I can't promise to stop your leak. Like it just translated into this brutal honesty, and people kind of eat it up. You know what I mean? They relate to it. They sit there and they really trust you at the end of it, because you're not just doing it to make the sale. You're not that guy that comes in and just tells them everything they want to hear, sprinkles fairy dust, and then, everything's going to be fine. Just give me your $6,000. I kind of go in there and I have a little edge to me and I say, hey, listen, this is what I suggest doing. Here's the honest facts of it. There might be a little trash in the yard. We'll do the best we can to clean it. My guys are really good at it. But if you sprinkle in that truth with the sale process, it makes you a lot more personal. It shows empathy because it shows that you care, that you want them to know ahead of time. Go ahead.
Let me back up for 1 second. So
sorry, I'm a talker, man.
well, I want to go because there's some parts of you talking. Alan, feel free to jump in here and ask questions too, because you worked with Alan, you worked with Ryan firsthand. So I'd like your perspective of what you've seen. But backing up for 1 second, Ryan, as an employer, I've always had a hard time rehiring someone that really went down your path. Like as an employer, I would have a hard time going, oh, sure, Ryan let's give him another shot. He torched this company and name. Like, one, why do you think Chuck did it? And what do you think? You said something about you felt like you almost owed Chuck at this point. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a big chance for him. I mean, I was a risk, and I had, you want to talk about burning a bridge. I had burnt the bridge, and the general manager, Rick, who I love to death, and I trust Rick with everything nowadays. I tell Rick everything. I bounce everything off of him. He hated my guts because it was like, man, why would you ever hire that guy back? Look what he did to us. Yeah. And I did it. It wasn't like Chuck. The next time Chuck saw me, he hired me. I mean, there was a path of kind of building myself back that he saw. Every couple of years I would touch base with him, and I'd see him at a convention, or Marvin from National would say something to him, or say, hey, Ryan's doing great. He's been at such and such company for 2 years and he's their number one salesman. I'm dropping off more liners than I've ever dropped off before, So there was a progression to it. So I think there was some stuff that made him feel a little bit more comfortable. But when he did finally take the and it was still a risk, even 10 years later after it happened, for him to believe in me, and not just believe in me and bring me back as like just a guy, but to bring me back and be like, hey man, let's build something. Like, let's come back and we're gonna give you a lot of freedom here. To believe in me that much, man, I took it to heart. Like I was like, there's no way I could let this guy down. Like there's no way I'm gonna walk in there and get caught cleaning gutters for $50 side money or something. Right. Like there's just no chance that's gonna happen. I'm gonna do everything I can to make this guy not regret hiring me again. And then that just led into more positive things, because then I knew how hard I could work, So it was a big deal for him to do that. It meant a lot to me. It still does mean a lot to me. I'm always going to be loyal to Chuck. Chuck is
almost like you want to prove something on a daily basis.
Oh man, it never stops. I'm a grinder, man. I want to win. And they did a mixed group when I first came to Chuck. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but they did a mixed group when they first came to Chuck, to kind of like came in and like checked out our company. And they came in and there's like 5 other techs there. And they're like, yeah, are you happy with what you got and what you make and where you're at? And everybody said yes. Well, I was the last one in, and I sat down and they said, "Hey, Ryan, are you happy with what you got and what you make?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, really? You're the only one that said it." I said, "You should fire every one of those guys. Because if you're not coming in with a little bit of grind, if you're not coming in with a little bit of energy to try and get a little more, you ain't working on my sales team like that. Like the sales team I got right now, they all want more. They come in every day. They get upset when they don't get good leads, when they lose, when they drop leads, when they don't sell jobs. Every day it's a grind. So I built a team at Winston's that's really good. Chuck has too, and he's giving me the reins to do it.
Well, to that, I'd like to kind of move in. I love your backstory. I love your reason, and you almost have a chip on your shoulder, not in a bad way, but in a good way, to kind of keep that edge up. And I think that's one of the most dangerous things. As guys get more successful, they become more complacent. And you are one of the most successful guys in this role that I know, and you still are grinding. And man, that's hard to find. So a couple quick things. I can't tell who this is. Says, yikes, I remember like it was yesterday. So that's somebody in your company. It might be Chuck.
It probably was Chuck. Yeah, I don't know.
And then Cody Whitwood says, "Chimneys all day, we bleed soot." And I love that. So let's talk about your process. And this is where I'd like, Alan, maybe you to talk about it a little bit. Alan, what you worked with Ryan, what's the difference? What makes that guy different? You've ridden with hundreds, if not thousands of guys. Yep. Why is Ryan different?
Well, it's been a while since I've been with Ryan. Probably, 7 years, maybe 6, 7.
5 or 6. I think it's been 6 years or something. Yeah,
6 years ago, and we rode together for a couple of years. And the thing that stood out to me with what he just said was his brutal honesty. He delivered things in a way that I probably would maybe sugarcoat a little more. And some of the things I remember being taken back by how direct he was in certain cases, and the customers always responded to it. And I think some of that's the difference in the North and the South, right? And in the way that you communicate in different areas. But the one thing that that stuck with me, I haven't even told you this, Ryan, but the one thing that stuck with me about him was how much he honestly did not care about himself. His entire process was to make sure that his team had work the next day. And I remember it was like 4 or 5 o'clock, and you probably don't remember this, Ryan, these old things that stick with me. Like you had like 3 crews, I think, at the time, and one of your crews didn't have a job for tomorrow. And you're like, I'm getting on the phone. And he literally got on the phone and started calling his open estimate saying, "Hey, I had an opening for tomorrow. I'd like to get you in." And he did not leave until he closed a deal so that his guys could go out and do installs the next day. And that's it wasn't for him to make the sell. It wasn't for him to make the commission. It was the responsibility that I saw him take for the team that he was entrusted with. And he was looking out for them and looking out for their family. And so when you have that genuine love and care for your team and your customer, there's no way that doesn't show to your customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I do. That's the way we're set up. We're set up, and that maybe that helps me. Maybe that gives me some of my drive, and maybe other owners should maybe look at some of that. Like it's like my sales guys own the install guys' schedule, because if we're not doing our job, nobody else eats. I mean, and so if we're setting these guys up and giving them jobs that are priced correctly and the materials right and everything else, then things go smooth. But if we're not doing our job and selling stuff, or if we're doing our job incorrectly and selling stuff and not getting the right materials or whatever, then we cost everybody else money. So to not take it personal would be a problem, in my opinion, because then those guys don't really respect you. And like you said, I mean, it's always been a genuine thing of mine. Like, these are my guys, even if they're Chuck's guys, but I take some ownership in it, because it's my job to make sure the schedules are full. So
I think this is such a huge, I don't know if I ever correlated it until just now. This is such a huge thing, because one of the things that, and Mark, I know you know this with some people, with companies that you consult with, I have it with ones that I do, that a lot of times there is that animosity between the sales team and the production team. There's this almost finger pointing of, well, they didn't bid it right, or they always give me the crap jobs, or they didn't even have the right, whatever it is. But it creates this culture conflict, right? Whereas when you go and you take ownership of the entire team, and like, this is my baby. If we win, we win together. If we lose, we lose together. But you take ownership of that. That makes your guys want to do more for you, right? You truly are a leader in your organization, and I don't think I ever quite put that together until literally just now. That whenever you command, respect like that the guys are, it's just like an owner being a leader, right? I mean, they're going to follow and do more for you, work harder for you, get more done, do better work, because they don't want that call from you saying, man, what are you doing on this job? And you know better, right? Because that's embarrassing. So
customers also respond well to it, because when you sit there and you go, we as a company, my install crew, we as a company are going to do this for you. We're a team, like, it's all together. So they trust you a little bit more, because I tell them I'm not doing the work. They're like, you're not going to do the work. And I'm like, no, you don't want me doing the work. I haven't done the work in 7-8 years. You want the guy that's doing this stuff every day. That's the guy right. You want. That's my guy. He's coming in here. He's my favorite guy. You know what I mean? I don't really know who's coming, but I'm like, they're all my favorite guys. Like, I care about them all. I want them all to kill it. And so when they show up, they've got expectations to meet too. So it's a double-edged sword there sometimes, but to say, I said it in my presentation, to use the words like we. Sometimes I say we as in me and the customer together. Sometimes I say we as in me and my guys together. It's never I. As soon as you start using the word I, it's bad.
You also speak like an owner. Like, when I listen to you present in Vegas, right. I would have thought you owned the company, and Chuck was sitting right beside me, right slightly behind me, and he was as proud as anything. I think he liked hearing you, maybe not as much talk as he likes to talk, but he loves seeing you win. And you were talking in a different way that was very owner-like. It's almost like you consider yourself an owner or as responsible as Chuck. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I don't consider myself the owner. This is Chuck's sandbox. I'm just playing in it. You know what I mean? But I do take ownership in and I said that one of my favorite books that I've read in my whole life was The Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, I took it really to heart. Like, Chuck gave me that book, and it meant a lot to me. And maybe I go a little different than it says on a lot of stuff, but I mean, anything I do, I own it. I own it. Bad things, good things, I try and own it. And so I get that from customers. Like, are you the owner? And I'm like, nope, I'm not. But I'm, and a lot of times they're like, well, you're the son of the owner because you got the same last name. And I'm like, no, there's no relation. But honestly, I approach it like it means the same to me as it would mean to Chuck. You know what I mean? Like it's Chuck takes it personal when guys don't do good or his customers are upset. And I take it personal too, and I take a vested interest in it.
You can tell.
I don't mean to come across as an owner, but I don't necessarily mind that I do. I don't think it hurts us. I don't think it hurts the company and to do that. I think maybe if anything, it's a shield for Chuck.
You exemplify the extreme ownership side. We're actually reading that book right now, and I'm talking about it on my podcast. So
I love it, man.
Yeah,
it's great.
A couple quick things from Brendan. Says, I learn from Ryan every day. Chuck is like the head coach. Ryan is the offensive coordinator.
That's good.
I love that. Then Cody, I guess he's talking to his team. He's like, Corey, Marty, Cole, Brock. Does this sound familiar? Cody says, I love the idea of having install teams assigned to a specific sales guy and call center reps creating teams across departments within the company. And I want to hit on that with you 1 second, Ryan, what you do. And then Marty says, every job that I sell, I look at being not my paycheck, but office personnel, management, crews, pay for the week. I try to hold myself accountable for other people's paychecks, not just my own. I love that. And that's exactly what you do. So let's talk about that for a second, Ryan. You're not just a paid estimator. You're a chimney sweep. You've got guys with you. Talk about how you guys do that.
Yeah. So we basically have chimney techs. So we have 6 guys right now, sometimes as many as 9, where we go out and we just do inspections, sweeps, estimates, second opinions, referrals. And we go out and sell stuff. We don't have so we go out and we sell the work, or we go out and we inspect, and then we determine what needs to be done. We present the estimate, we sell it. That work then we fill out cover sheets, and we fill out the material orders and how much time it's going to take. We fill all that out, and then we kick it to our office. In our office, has the CSRs that basically what they do is they determine where it goes best on the schedule, and then they assign it to an install crew. Now, we don't have specific crews for specific guys. There was a time where we tried that. It was hard because if you're my guy and I'm selling $3 million a year, 2.5, $3 million a year, and then you're the other guy's guy and he's selling 500,000 a year. You know what I mean? So
Team Ryan is a lot better.
Everybody wants to be on Team Ryan, yeah. But so what we do is we kind of spread it out and we base it off of who's good at what. We have job matrices where we know who's best at what, who's good at tuck pointing, who's good at relines, who's good at heat shields, who's good at this, who's good at scaffolding. So we have crews that are spread out and we kind of dish it out based off of that. And so everybody gets one of my jobs. So there'll be days I'll come in and 4 crews will be doing one of my jobs. There'll be days I come in and no crews are doing my job. So it gets spread out. We don't really have a ton of say in it. I do just because I get involved in everything. But we don't have a ton of say. We pass to the install crews that morning of the job. We have a discussion. We sit down or the day before. We go, hey, here's the job. Here's the promise that I made to the client. Please deliver. And you give them everything they need to deliver it on, and then they go out and deliver it. And then, I normally, the way I am, I touch base with my client on probably about 30-40% of my jobs. They're real easy. I kind of leave it up to the guy, but I normally touch base with my client. Like, hey, how'd it go? And I want to get that response. And then I'm like, hey, if they did a great job, give them a Google review, go online and give them a review. They'll get a free gift card, buy them lunch the next day. Like, it means a lot to them. So, that's kind of our process, how we close stuff out. And there's a whole bunch of sales stuff in there and follow-ups and everything else, but that's the gist of it. Salesmen sell, installers do the work, and we don't really choose who does it.
It would be interesting to poll the audience. How many, if you're a sweep or if you're an estimator, if you're a technician, how many of you consistently follow up on your jobs that you've sold after they're installed? I would be willing to bet that number is less than 10%.
Yeah,
it's a huge mistake.
You want to get a client that's going to refer you to their friends and just feel like I made a promise when I was there. They felt like I cared. How can I prove more than I cared than to call and ask how things went after they've already paid us the money? Like, that's like proving that I cared. And so you're going to get that client, and that client's going to go, hey, sis, hey, mom, hey, anytime they walk into somebody's house for having a fire, they're going to go, I got the best chimney guy if you don't have one,
Absolutely.
That's how I build a lot of clientele, by just doing those little things and proving that I care. Not just
and that's the easy low-hanging fruit, right? That's the referred in to call Ryan. He'll take care of you, right?
Yep. And then I want them to contact me directly. Call me, email me. I'll get it put on the schedule,
Absolutely.
I love that. Well, so you also talked about when you're in the home. You talked about how you're a big guy. Talk about your in-home presentation, because I thought this was fascinating.
Yeah, so I'm 300 pounds, 6'1". I'm a big guy. I'm tattooed all up, and I'm not, so I'm not the clean cut, salesman that walks in there with the shirt buttoned up and the shirt tucked in. I normally got spans on. I got the spans. I got the shorts that go between the ankles and the knees. Because I get hot, man. I don't do it because of the style. Well, maybe I do, but I'm in the 90s. That's where in the 90s everybody wore long shorts. Like Michigan State, Michigan basketball. But so I'm not they probably look at me out the peephole and go, oh my God, what did we get into? You know what I mean? So when I knock on the door, I normally step way back from the door. I kind of give some room. I don't ever want to be holding the door when they try and open it for me. Now, if it's an elderly lady, I'll run up and hold the door for her real fast, like grab the door. I'm pretty conscious about it. I also work really hard on making myself, I know it sounds crazy, but I make myself low. So whenever maybe not when I'm looking and doing my inspections, I got to be where I am. Whenever I'm talking with the client, I always try and drop my level. I don't know what science there is to that. I know I've always had better luck with it, because whenever I feel like I'm towering over somebody or I'm on them, I intimidate them a little bit. And I got a loud, voice, So I will lay down on the floor, and if they sit down on a low chair, I'm like, oh man, I got to get low. So I lay down. I lay down on the floor on the hearth and kind of, lounge on the hearth and start talking to them. It works. I know it sounds crazy, but it works because they're speaking down to me. It's like, and then I feel more comfortable there. and I've told all my sales guys, like the number one thing to me about sales, I don't care what your process is. If you're assume the sale, build the need, whatever, all the different ways of selling that there is, 20 different ways of selling, if not more, that you're going to have success in selling. If you're not comfortable, if you don't feel comfortable as the person laying out the information, then they're not going to be comfortable with you. So whatever your process is, you need to do what you need to do in the home to feel comfortable. Like Brennan, who just mentioned a second ago, I've talked about him in my speech. He's the best on the spot closer in my company by far. Like he walks in and they chase him around the house with credit cards. Like I don't know how he does it. Like he's literally climbing up ladders. They're like, here, take my card with you. Run it while you're up there. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how he does it, but he does it. So and he's comfortable with that and he owns that and he's good at it. Whereas me, I don't push. I don't really ask. I just lay it out there. I'm confident with it. I'll even tell people like, hey, get some other opinions. If you want to bounce what they said off of me, feel free to call me. I'm available. Here's my cell phone number. And that's the way I sell. And I feel comfortable doing it that way. And I think that helps. And so when I'm in the house talking to a customer, I'm very conscious about appearing comfortable. I like to stay low. My demeanor changes with who I'm talking to. Like if I'm talking to a sweet old lady, I have a sweet old demeanor. If it's a big boisterous guy from with the frat, stuff hanging everywhere, then I'm normally a little bit like, talk a little bit more open. And so I change how I am. I'm very fluid with it. So, and I just try and stay comfortable, and that seems to work for me,
I think it's interesting that you picked up on that. Don't be intimidating, especially while you're trying to present.
Yeah.
You said, sometimes it's a 100-pound, housewife, and there's this big guy standing in front of them, and naturally they're not going to necessarily be comfortable with that. Yeah. We're always like that at home. We got to be cognizant of we're a stranger right in their living room. And that's not normal for a lot of people. And especially, like you said, a big guy, maybe gruff, maybe scared. And you kind of bring that way down. And then lastly, you're not really asking for the sale at the end. You said, Brennan does, but you don't. So what's your process? You don't ask for a sale, but you clearly follow up. So how does that look for you?
I'll ask for the sale. Like I guess I kind of let it happen. So if I feel like the conversation's going and that's just the next move there is to ask for the sale and say, hey, when would you like to get on the schedule, or would you like to proceed with this? I will. I just don't typically do it. But my process is normally I will try and present the proposal while I'm there.
Right.
So while I'm there, and I'll ask the customer, are you comfortable with sitting down and having a conversation? Like if I feel like I'm bigger than them or I'm intimidating to them in any ways, I put it out there. I'm like, hey, tell me what you're comfortable with. Would you like me to call you guys later? Like, what do you want to do? And whatever response they give me, that's what they want. I'm going to give them what they want, So, and I don't push past it. I don't go, well, let's do this anyways. Like I'm very open about not needing them to hear my presentation at that moment if they're not comfortable with it or they're busy. But I follow up. And there's some that I'm more aggressive with the follow up. Like I'll call that night or I'll call the next day. There's other ones that I'll wait 3 or 4 days and call. I don't really have a strict process on how to do it. We do try and follow up with all of them in 24 hours. My number one go-to follow-up, like the first immediate follow-up, is to call and just make sure they got it. I know that sounds crazy, and I know that goes against some of what other people say. I don't call and like start going sales mode. I mean, start going, hey, did you look at my proposal, blah, 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 blah. This is how I close so many jobs, just by reaching out 24 hours later and going, hey, I didn't hear back from you. I just want to make sure you got everything that I sent and you understood it.
Right.
And just be quiet. And then it just opens up and comes back to me a lot. And people are like, oh yeah, we read it, but we didn't like this part in it. There's this, can we chat about this? And it just starts a conversation because I'm asking a question that they have to respond to. I'm asking a question and I'm being quiet. I'm not giving them an answer. I'm not giving them a way out. I'm going, hey, did you get it? And did you understand everything? So they've got to answer that question. So I'm going to get most of the information I need based off that next response from them. And if they didn't respond, then I'm calling.
How often do they not get it? How often do they say, no, I never received it? Like
10%,
never, 20%?
Never.
They always get it.
They always get it. I know they got it. That's just my way of touching out. They always got it. I know they got it. I get confirmations that they received it on my end. You know what I mean? That's just my way of non-invasively reaching out to them.
I've seen our responses like we sent it and we were one letter off. We did something and they didn't receive it. It landed in their junk file. So it sounds like that's not really a deal for you. So Alan, you've seen him, you've seen his process. Clearly you coach a lot of sales guys and you have to say what works for you, and results are really all that matters.
I have this saying that you give me a person that follows a solid sales process, I will have them almost always be a natural salesperson. I think that Ryan's, as we've called over many years, one of the unicorns, right? I think that his person and his personality probably outplays process, where that's really, really rare in an individual. But there's so many things that you've naturally picked up on without, and I know you've been through a lot of training with a lot of people, and but just things like reciprocation, right? Changing your tone, changing your attitude, changing the way you speak, speeding up, slowing down based on the pace that they're doing. Every sales book on the planet will tell you to always be lower than your customer, right? So whether or not you knew that, or it's just something that you understood that, hey, when this happens, my customers are more comfortable. And, you don't ever want to tower. You don't ever want to speak down to someone, right? These are all things.
About that.
Yeah, that's right. And then, I always teach the idea of scheduling the follow-up, right? The advance, the idea of, it's so important for me that when you and your husband talk through this tonight, that all your questions are answered. And so as part of my everyday process, I do this with all my customers. I want to give you a call tomorrow and just kind of write down whatever questions you guys have for me. That way, when we talk, I can go through and answer all those for you. And that way they're expecting that call. I find I have better luck when they know I'm calling, what time I'm calling, than if I just randomly, pick up the phone and call them, especially if they didn't like something in it. It's much less likely they're going to pick that up. But again, the absolute basics, man. I know this sounds so crazy to you doing what you do, and probably the people even watching this live, because this is the upper echelon of people that are trying to learn and trying to train. But I honestly believe less than 20% of technicians even make one follow-up call to their customer. It is absolutely mind-boggling to me that you are willing to spend 2 to 3 hours of your time risking your life, getting dirty, getting on ladders, doing the work, and then never think about that customer again unless they call you. You're just throwing away money. And so the things that you have picked up or you've been trained and that you're doing are all absolutely fantastic ways to increase your sales, and it's showing in your results.
Yeah, I'm very careful, and Chuck is very cognizant of telling me a lot that I can't train the guys that work with me to be me. Like, it's just there's just something there that maybe they probably have their own way of doing it, but so I wanted to be clear on that with my thing at the convention was, I don't want to tell somebody this is the right way. Like, this is my way. This is what works for me. Use what you can. If you get 2 things out of my whole speech, that's great. Like, like just kind of being aware when you show up at the customer's house and checking out the landscape, look at bumper stickers, look at other car seats. Like just little things like that when you walk into a house, you see what pictures are up. Like, you just have to be very observant and do those things. And then have your follow-up process. You have to. Like, I literally, that's just crazy to me that you wouldn't follow up with a proposal. Now everybody does it their own way,
So
yeah, I think that, I agree so much with you, man. This is why people ask me, well, what is the right way to sell? Man, there is no right way, right? I believe in process. I believe that there is a right process, but you've got to be your own person and personality within that. The moment that you become fake, not yourself, real, disingenuous, you create this wedge, lack of trust there. You might as well have not even showed up to the door.
Right.
So, you have to be yourself within the process. So I love that you do that.
This question from Ryan John, I would love to have the time to follow up with customers we have closed with. How did your company establish that process and making time for the phone and office in general?
Well, we work hard on keeping our schedules free, and especially me, because I have so many referrals and like contractors that I work with, my schedule is very lightly scheduled, and I schedule time. Like I don't go to my first job, and this might make everybody cringe. My first job doesn't start till 10 o'clock in the morning. Like I'm at the office at 7:10 every morning, and I don't get to my first job until 10. So I literally set aside time to be a manager, time to follow up, time to catch up, time to do those things. I schedule that time into my day. Like it's got to be scheduled. If you don't, and you're a busy person and you have 3 or 4 jobs a day and you're not scheduling that time either at the beginning or at the end of the day, I think you're making a mistake, especially if you're an upper salesman that's got a ton of clients and those relationships are everything. You know, like those relationships with my contractor referrals or my roofing referrals, they mean so much to me, like, because they call me daily and give me jobs. Like just today, I probably forwarded 5 emails or texts to my call center going, schedule them. You know, 5 jobs in one day from 3 or 4 different contacts. And so if I don't have time to follow up with them, to follow up with jobs that aren't closed or jobs that are finished, then I'm making a mistake by not scheduling that time. I think you don't have to do it every day. I mean, you can do it twice a week. You can make it Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 8. Just make some time to schedule it. I think it's important. I schedule it for me. You know, that's what I do. That's how I've been able to develop the time.
So to that point, what do you think the magic number of jobs are in a day? We try to work on 4. It sounds like you work on 3 or even 2.
Yeah, I work on 3. So our number was for all of our guys, it's 3 jobs but we have with those 3 jobs, you'll probably get a 4th add-on, a no heat call, an emergency call. We do inspection, like home inspections. So those come in last second. We work with a couple home inspection companies and some roofing referrals. Like we just jump on those right away. So we want a little flexibility in our schedule. So we normally schedule 3, but we'll expect to do 4 every day. And normally you get 4 jobs 3 times. Now me, I do 2 jobs every day and then end up with 4 or 5. Like that's just how it is. We schedule 2 jobs and I end up with 4 or 5, and I don't even leave the office till 10. So it gets a little crazy sometimes, but that was my point to the owners in there is I know you think that you've got to maximize money by just jamming your guys every slot full, giving them someplace to be. But I think you're doing them a disservice because you're not giving them the right amount of time to do their follow-ups, to check in, build relationships with their customers. You're not really giving them the time at the home to do what they got to do to build the need and to build trust between them and the client. You're kind of rushing them. And guy, could you imagine being the last client on a 5-day job where you just all 4 jobs beforehand went bad? You're that 5th client. Like there's no chance you're making that sale.
So true.
So it's just not worth it to us to slam them. And Chuck, one of the things I love about Chuck, man, is he listens to that kind of stuff. And April and he listens to me and he listens to everybody involved with you guys with the 2-3 jobs a day, 4 jobs a day. And so when I first started Winston's, it was 8-9 jobs a day. Yeah, I was at a company 5-6 years ago that was 12 jobs a day. It was insane. And one of those jobs would be like a tuck point 3 courses. I'm not even lying to you. I'd be crying on the roof at 8 o'clock at night going, please, God, let me finish. You know what I mean? I got 2 more jobs to go to. But it was the honest to God truth. I wish I was lying. But he's open to that. And so he kind of gives us some play. We all have, as salesmen, we all have the ability to contact the office and go, hey, free me up a little bit of time. And they do it. We've got that flexibility. So owners should really think about letting their guys have a little bit of time, even if it's not every day, just a few days a week where they can have that flex time to do what they got to do.
I think, if the technicians would take the most out of it and make the most of it like you do, owners would have no problem doing it. The problem is sometimes you book 3 jobs and your guys are back at noon or 1. Yep. And they're done. They're going home. And you're like, gosh, well, if the guys are going to go home at 1, I'm going to book 2 more jobs on them because we got to, I think it's your trustworthiness and also your ability to make the most of the time. Yeah. That if everybody would make the most of their time, we would all say, yeah, 3 jobs sounds good if you will do what Ryan does. And so I think you're unique in that ability to want fewer jobs. Well, yeah. It also, you hit on something that was interesting to me that you always bring somebody with you, but sometimes you bring 2 guys with you. So there's 3 of you total on a sweep. Can you talk about how that helps you or how you use that?
Yeah, so I'm always training. I'm always training, even if it's a helper that's with me 7 months. Like I'm always training. So I think it's important to have a guy, because that's just a pipeline feed. Like you should be training internally with your people and bringing them up internally. Our helpers become install helpers, and then our install helpers become install leaders, and then our install leaders come back to the sales side and get certified, and then go. Like we have a process that these guys have to go through. So it's you have to have that feeder system into your thing, into your company. But just having guys on the truck, 1 or 2 guys, it gives me the ability to kind of talk with clients at my pace. I'm not rushing. I'm not worried about ladders. I'm not worried about, dust control. I'm not doing all that stuff. Like we're worried about it, but I got guys that are on it, and then it gives me a chance to run the camera, really discuss it with them. It gives me a chance to go to the truck and build my report and not rush. I know there are some companies that don't send guys out with helpers. If that works for them, that works for them. But I think to me, there's a ceiling there. Like I think you've capped that guy at a certain potential. Like he's just never going to break through a certain point of sales being by himself. Not and doing inspections. Now, if he's just doing estimates, that's one thing. But like I'm showing up, I'm cleaning chimneys every day. Like I sweep chimneys, I clean them, I do small repairs. Like we do that. So I have to have people with me in order to have time with the client. Or even if there's extra time, I'll go to the truck and make calls. Like I'll go to the truck and write emails and do other stuff. Like, so if I do have extra time on the job because I got a helper, I'm still working. And I think that you're totally right about giving guys too much room. So I understand that. If you are going to give guys open schedules, make their first spot in the morning after your huddle the open schedule. Because then if you give them 3 jobs and it's like 8 to 10, 10 to 12, and then then all of a sudden they're gone by 1 o'clock. They're home. They don't care. But if you make it their first slot that's open, maybe you get a little bit more out of them. Sorry.
I think Brennan hit on why he outsells you in the home. It's right here. It's his good looks.
Yeah, I figured it.
You.
He's another Spance wearer. Don't let him fool you. He wears the Spance. I don't call him. Yeah.
Quick question from Chad Murray. I missed the last 30 minutes. I'd like to ask Ryan, if he hires, is there something he's looking for if he does do the hiring for sales?
Well, we all do. Chuck does the hiring and firing at Winston's, but I have a lot of input in it, and I will bring guys in. And a lot of times we'll hire guys internally that just show promise, that have some, that are just beyond regular knuckle dragging guys. You see it in them. We have Ken helps us a lot right now, hiring guys, bring guys. He's brought in some really good guys lately. So we enjoy having him, and he sent us some nice guys. But yeah, we do hire. I do hire a little bit, but I normally bring in the knuckle draggers. I got the guys getting the work done. Chuck kind of brings in the talent and then turns it over to me and lets me kind of mold them into shape,
So Alan, I'd like to ask you that question. What do you think is better? Is it better to hire a guy that seems like he's good at sales, or bring a technician up through sales? Or like, what have you seen if you're trying to hire for that? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, my answer has not changed on this in probably 10 years. And I've got people that fight me on it, and that's okay. You do your thing, but give me a person that can talk and communicate and build rapport all day long, and I can teach them chimneys. I can teach them our history. I mean, my whole thing is I didn't want to know the first thing about a chimney, right? I didn't know the difference between a chimney and a chase, whenever I started this, but I could still go out and do ride-alongs and close deals, because I wasn't there to fix chimneys and fireplaces. I was there to understand what problems my customers had and how my company could help resolve that, And so as long as I could solve the customer's problems, I can learn the trade, right? I've not just chimneys, but like we all know Mike Fazy. I don't know if he's on here. Chad works with him. I go out with his window and door guys, right? I don't know the first thing about security doors and windows and all the features and bells and whistles, but I do know that customer had a break-in down the street, and that they're nervous, and that they want to make sure that doesn't happen to them, and they want to know that when it's done right, and that the company is going to stand behind it. Who cares what the product is, right? So always, to answer your question, always give me a guy that can communicate, that has confidence, and that can truly empathize and relate with customers. I also
think it matters what kind of company you have too. Like for us, where we don't eat what we kill. You know, we have salesmen and techs where we go out and we do inspections and sweeps, and then we kick the work. It's easier to hire a salesman or a guy that's really articulate and well spoken, and those are easier. As a company, we're easier to hire those guys and plug them into our system. Whereas if you're a chimney company where your guy goes out and sells the liner and then he's got to go drop the liner, then 3 days later, like you can't, that maybe that articulate guy ain't gonna cut it, because you're doing the work.
That's an interesting perspective, because I've always taken the opposite approach to that I've always thought it was much easier to train a guy to do the work. Talking as a guy that's never done the work, I should say that, than it is to teach a guy all the nuances of all the little things that you just talked about, reciprocation and understanding body language and knowing when to slow down, when to speed up. Are they paying attention? Do they care? Am I talking about something that they don't want? And so there's a couple clients that I work with that train their guys to be salespeople first and then turn them over to be technicians later. And I've always thought that you should have some basis of understanding, like Mark's apprenticeship program. You have to understand chimneys, but at the end of the day, I'm the last guy you want with a screwdriver and a saw. Like, it's absolutely the truth.
Also, to your point, Ryan, I've noticed that. Well, I noticed when I had guys that sold their own work and then did the work, they kind of fell into grooves. Like, some guys love finding rip and replaces, so they naturally found more to pull out. Some guys hated tuck pointing, or any rebuilds, so magically they never found rebuilds to do. Right. They also, they'd find what, if they had to do it themselves, they found what they wanted to do. They didn't find what they didn't want to do. And that was hard for me unless I'm literally, as an owner, reviewing everything in there. Because also guys can take pictures, but they can also not take pictures of stuff and take it at angles. So for me, having a salesman or a sweep or somebody that also hands off makes it more pure. It makes it more, you're going to try to find everything. You're going to make sure, because it's not up to what you like or dislike. It's what the customer needs and it's what you find. Right. And so I find it more of a pure system to have guys that find the work and communicate the work and hand off to the guys who may not be so good at talking about, but they love demo. They love tearing stuff down and rebuilding them, but they might not be great at the kitchen table. Right. Couple questions. Please. Says, this might be Chuck. It says, we make the sales techs run an install truck for a month.
We do. At least a month. At least a month. Marty says, I love Alan's 7-second rule and it works flawlessly. Definitely build that trust from the ETA call. Ask them simple questions like, how's your day going? And kind of getting that going. And maybe in a second, I'd ask you to expound on that, Alan. And then Chad says, I'm on the higher salesman type people for sweep estimators. No eat what you kill here at Master Services either. So, Alan, talk about your 7-second, what he's talking about, your 7 seconds.
So, I mean, it's just basic rapport build, right? It's the idea that when you show up to a home, the customer has an agenda, and that's usually way different than your agenda, right? They hire you for a sweep and inspection. They expect you to walk in and sweep the fireplace that they just used 2 days ago, leave the paper that says it's good to go, right? And they're not really expecting an interaction, a conversation, a Q&A, a discovery. And so the quicker we get them off that agenda and onto our agenda of having just a calm, everyday conversation that I'm just another guy and a friend and here to help you, the quicker you can change the mindset of that customer. So the 7-second rule is, and I've Googled and Googled and Googled. I didn't just make this up, but I cannot find my source for this. But I remember reading a book probably 15, 20 years ago that said it takes the human mind 7 seconds to get off a track. So the idea of an interrupt-driven office, right? If the phone rings and you are in the middle of something, it literally takes you 1 minute to get back to the same mind space that you were before you had that interruption. So the idea of 7 seconds is when we go up to the door, we make our space like Ryan said, and we talk about absolutely anything except for why we're there, right? Yeah. It can be the weather, it could be the Redskins banner, God help them. It could be a number of things, but we do something to create that I'm a person, I'm not here to sweep your chimney. And then once we've created that personal bond, then we can kind of get into our initial discovery of help me understand what brings us out today. What are we trying to do?
It doesn't matter what it is. It's anything. It could be
Right.
it could be something as simple as they got a cast on their arm, you know what I mean? Or they got the dog that ran up to you. Like, my wife breeds dogs. You want to see a picture? Like, it's breaking that chimney. It's breaking away from what you need to do and
That's right.
just making yourself human and making them know that you're not only thinking about how to make money on them. You know what I mean? I think they think every guy that comes to their house to do service work is just looking to get them. Like, that's just the
Talk
problem.
about that, Ryan, where you're in the bad news business, right? A lot of times. Now, Alan talks about trying to make sure you find something that's good and kind of go over, hey, these things are good, but this is bad. Can you talk about how you deliver the bad news when they expected you to just sweep the chimney and come out of there with a $300 charge, and here you're going to present a $6,000 problem?
Yeah, I'm very, very good at, and I train my guys to, like, whenever we run a video scan, say the client's not in the room, we start the scan. I will always start the scan in a good place. Even if it's hard to find, like we'll search a chimney for a good spot. And then I'm like, hey, I just wanted you to see this. This is the basic anatomy of your system. Here's how it works. Here's like a little diagram you can look at. This is what we're at right now. This is what we're looking at. This is what we want to see. And then you go, well, let's take a look. And you go ahead and rotate the camera. And then the big gap opens up. And you're like, like I've seen guys in the living room, like their helpers, like get excited when they saw it crack. You know what I mean? Like, so you can't do that, man. You can't sit there and cheer when there's a gap. Oh, we got him. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do that. Like, it's more of like, man, I'm sorry I found that. Okay, let's keep looking here, and then look, and then, oh, there's a couple good spots. So there must have been something going on this side of the chimney. You see the water lines. I'm very confident, even on the outside on the brickwork. Like, when I'm taking pictures, I'm telling a story with the pictures, and I'm like, hey, here's the crack at the top, and here's where it runs to, and you see how the mortar deterioration is coming there, and then see down here, it's better. Like, down past the roof line, the chimney's in pretty good shape. Like, and I always try and emphasize something good with something bad. I never just lay it on bad. One thing. Now, there are some chimneys that you just can't do that. Yeah. And on those, I honestly, I'll be like, listen, I'm sorry. Like, I would love to tell you something good about your chimney, but there's just nothing good to tell. I'm gonna kind of make a joke out of it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. It's just not, today's not your day, But it's trying to give them something positive with the end, and then also making them feel like you don't care that it's what you found. I think I'm very good at that. I'm like, I'm happy I found it for them. I'm happy I found this for you because I don't want something worse to happen, something bad to happen. And then, just kind of not being excited that I found it, but at the same time, just giving them the sense that I'm glad they called me. Here's what we found. I didn't do it. This has probably been here for a long time, kind of kick the blame down the road, like the builder, the home inspector, the last chimney guy that was here that didn't scan it. You know what I mean? Just kind of don't blame it on me, because you'll get those angry reactions. And so I'm really good at deflecting those. Not so much blaming other people, just kind of putting a list out there and going, it could be any of those guys. It definitely ain't me,
I think you deliver confidence too. I think,
yeah.
Every time I've talked to you, you're very confident about the whole process. And I think as a homeowner, I would have confidence that you, one, know how to fix it, and two, you're shooting me straight.
Yeah. And you can always get a hold of me. I'm easy to get a hold of. Like, I think that's important for a person that has relationships and is tech in the field. Like, I'm easy to get a hold of. And sometimes I say, hey, I'm out of town. Make sure you email me, and then I'll get back to you when I can. I normally tell the client, if you call me between these hours, I'm normally available every day. I answer the phone, and I always return calls. I never dodge calls. And so them feeling like they can get a hold of me if something doesn't go right or doesn't go their way, and them knowing that that's possible, I think kind of gives them a little sense of ease and trust that they're going to be able to.
Sorry, I thought
you're fine. No, I talk too much anyway.
No, there's so many little things that are so big that you do. I just want to let's make sure we recognize them. Some things that you said earlier about when we do this, when my guys do this, right? We call that taking ownership of the sale as a team, right? There's powerful language that's called if you, when we, right? So if you is, if you decide, basically meaning, look, I'm just here to deliver a message. If this is something you decide to do, and then when we, that gives them kind of the perception of choice, right? And then when you've already taken ownership of resolving the problem. And so, you said earlier you don't really ask for the sale, but you do because you have a very similar process that I do. It's called the presumptive sale, right? You called me for a problem. I assume you want me to resolve that problem. Unless you tell me we're not resolving that problem together, then we're moving forward, right? All my language is making the assumption that we're solving this problem together. That's why we use the when we language, right?
Even if you accept 2 weeks down the road, I'm assuming while I'm there, I'm getting the sale. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you talk about being easy to get a hold of, setting those expectations with your customers of what is the best way to communicate with you. Yes. Look, I'm with customers 6 to 8 hours a day. The easiest way that you can communicate with me if you need me quickly is whatever it is to you, right? Text message, whatever the case is. Set your boundaries of timelines. I take calls up until 7 o'clock. If you call me after 7, I'm probably going to respond to you in the morning. Just set those clear expectations, because if you call a sales guy, right, and they don't get back to you right away, immediately, what do they think whenever they choose you to do the work? Well, if he's not calling me back now and I'm trying to give him money, then, what are my chances of having that happen when we actually commit to this? So I know this seems like such simple stuff, but I want you to recognize that the things that you're doing are all very strategic, well-earned, and things that put you where you're at. So, I mean, these are all awesome nuggets that I hope people are really gathering. So
I'm getting a lot of good response. So clearly he's hitting some, and I've got some other questions that are coming in on my phone and not on this. Ryan, were you getting ready to say something though?
No, go ahead and shoot it. No, I'm like I said, I'm kind of new to some of this sharing stuff. I've been sharing with my guys primarily, but I mean, I'm in.
Oh, you in it now? You've done it now.
Something out of it, man. I really do. I hope everybody gets something out of it, and I'm an open book, and anybody out there watching, I'm available. Like, you can.
This is also a testament to Chuck Hall, because some guys won't let their guys talk to anybody, and I know Chad does, and I do. But there's some guys who are like, "Hey, this is a secret. This is our secret sauce. I don't want you to share." But the truth is, that's how we all get better, is to help each other. And I really appreciate your time. And I normally have this show for about an hour. We're coming up on the end of it, but I do want to. There's a few more things. Go ahead. Chuck Roydhouse, he just makes a comment: command and control of each job description. Each employee has buy-in, being the captain of their own ship. Let's see, this wins for the team. Jay Walker says, we do every completed job. I think that was earlier to what you said. So this is James Phillips. He's with Heat Shield and Saver Systems. Even as a supplier, I do follow up with customers and try to get a personal touch. Ryan, this has been a great live, and I have enjoyed it a lot. Looking forward to next month with our training at Winston's. Hope we can have dinner and have a better conversation.
As long as he's buying, I mean.
John White says, we have our office girls follow up on estimates as well as email. Should I have the estimators and the text follow up? So I would say that would be yes. I mean, I think your best to answer that, Alan or Ryan. Seems like the best first call is the guy who was there.
Yeah. And I always touch it with something personal. Like, I'm always like, hey, how was your arm? Remember that cast? I remember that cast. Did you get that cast? Like, I mean, there's always something. Like, I take notes at jobs, mental notes, and I'll write them down on my tablet, or I'll write them in my thing, so that when I follow up, I have something to work from. And I'll ask, like, hey, because maybe they mentioned they're going to their daughter's graduation that day. Like, I'll ask how it was. Like, I try and do those little tiny things that I think they're important. So, and the CSR or somebody in your office can't do that. It's just a drone generic. Yep. You're going to work. Follow-ups work, period. You're going to get some with that, but you're not going to get the same result.
One thing I saw Marty said this, that when I leave a customer's house, they know 3 things about me. I was a firefighter. I love dogs, and fishing's my happy place, right? If you've been in, I bet you could poll 99 out of 100 people that I've been in the field with on a ride along, and there's probably not one, maybe 1 out of 100 would tell you that during a customer appointment, there's a point every single call that I have brought out my phone to show a picture, right? Of something. It could be my dog. It could be my grandkids. It could be a previous job. It could be a vacation. It is something that I've related to with them in their house that I can then say, I too have that enjoyment, and it creates that bond. And then when you make that follow-up call, whether you're trying to follow up on, are they going to do the work, or after the work, exactly what Ryan's saying, you connect back to that. Like, if I see, I have my, well, I got a ton of notifications right now, but Titans are always on my screen. If you know me, I'm a huge Titans guy. And if I walk in, doesn't matter where I'm at, if I walk in and I see a Redskins thing, I guarantee you that's one of my openers is, well, I'm glad I know that before I price this out. And I'll show them my, and it just creates that, that camaraderie, because we're all football fans, right?
I do that with Alabama fans.
Exactly.
Alabama and Florida fans.
If I hear the word roll come out of your mouth, we're going out back, right?
I bring them up. I'm like, I won't hold it against you. I was going to give you a discount, but
That's right.
Alabama's tough, man. Y'all got enough national championships. You don't need this 10%.
That's right. Say roll one more time.
Yeah.
A couple more things. John White, Mark, do you record these episodes so I can show these to my staff? It's a couple things, John. If you're on SureFire, we put these up on the platform every week, but also it stays on the SureFire page. You can always pull these up and watch them. Also, Mike Fazy says, "Love your story, Ryan. Thanks for all that you. Thanks to all for taking your time to share." He has a target with an arrow or a dart through it. Cody Whitwood says, "Great show. We need another noob live." So, okay, Cody, point taken. And he said Ryan should be on. Ryan's not a noob, but he's new to you guys. He's old school. He's been around for a while. And then let's see. Chuck Roadhouse says, "Personal connection and trust wins a sale." Chad says, I've been getting our guys to have 3 things you must know about them in their training from the start. Be a person, like Alan said earlier. Good stuff. Couple more things.
Brutal honesty, man. Brutal honesty is also, I tell clients, be honest with your clients. Just lay it out for them. Tell them the truth. And tell them, even if it's got ugly hair on it and it's a award, just give it to them. Like, hey, the bricks aren't going to be perfect. We're going to do the best we can. We're good at this, but just be honest with them. People respond to that. They trust you more. You
said that before too. When you say, look, you said this before, I could match this, say what you say about brick and mortar.
So if I'm rebuilding your chimney, I can sit there and know the brick type, know the brick color, know the color mortar they use, know the color sand they use, the texture sand they use. I could know the mixture that they use, whether they use 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1, whatever the mixture that they use. I could do all that and duplicate it perfectly. It's not going to match because I can't duplicate 45 years of age, humidity, and weathering on that chimney. So there's no way I can sit here and tell you that I can match it perfectly. And you will set their expectations at a different level. Plus, they end up appreciating you for being honest.
Yeah, they trust you.
And you're never going to be that guy that didn't deliver on what they promised. Hey, I'm going to build your chimney, and you don't talk about brick match. You don't talk about mortar not matching perfectly. You're always going to be on that phone at the end of the job, once a week, twice a week, trying to explain yourself and how they're dumb for not understanding it wasn't going to match. Well, you didn't tell them, man. All you had to do was tell them, and it never would have came up. And put it in writing. Just say it.
Good stuff.
So and they end up responding to that.
I love that. Francis says, "I'm glad you're sharing what you're doing to become a winner."
Yeah, man.
Marty says, "Attention to detail and people reading skills are key." And then, of course, Calvin Rawls. I don't know where he's from. Go Chiefs! What the hell?
Yeah.
Good to hear from you, Calvin. Man, Ryan, thank you so much. I know we've gone over, and you're a hardworking guy like everybody, but you shared your heart and you shared who you are, and you're a true honor, a blessing to this industry, and you're just coming out as well. So thank you for setting your goal, and we all won from you setting that goal and delivering on it.
Yeah, I think I'll do it again, man. But I really appreciate you guys giving me a forum to kind of lay out there and trusting me to do it. Again, I don't like letting people down when they believe in me. So having guys like you, Alan, Chuck, and April, and everybody kind of believe in me, even the guys out there, I don't want to let y'all down. I won't. So if you ever give me an opportunity or if you got questions, get with me, man. I'm not gonna let you down. I'll help you out. Whatever it takes.
Being you, man.
All right, guys.
Yeah. Thanks you so much.
Mark. Thanks for having me.
Guys. Appreciate you guys. Have a good night. Man, I always say this, but I love doing this show, and I love hearing people, talk about, how they do it, how they win. And hopefully you guys get a lot out of it, just like I do. I'm just always curious, and I always like hearing people's story. I love Ryan's story. He's a guy that's gone through a lot, and he's also a guy that's winning. And then Ryan says, "I hope Ryan can make the time to provide some insight again." I think he can. I think he knows this. He may not know it. We're going to have him in Nashville at the Business Symposium. The CSI Business Symposium will be at my shop June 9th and 10th. Alan will be speaking. I'm speaking. We're going to have Chuck Hall speaking. We're going to have Ryan speaking. And we got a handful of guys coming in. Jasper Drangler's going to come in. He was on the show a couple weeks ago. So we're going to have a really good business symposium in Nashville, June 9th and 10th. You'll see some more details coming out. Jay Walker says, amen. Great to see Jay in Vegas. Love seeing that guy. He's given so much to the industry, still does. All right, guys, that's our time. We'll do it again next week. Talk to you soon.